meeting. So let's see where I'm coming from. Okay, I'm coming from Italy. Okay, and then this is my city. This Vicenza is a small city, characterized by neoclassic architecture, as you see here, and the city of gold, because we have many factories involved in gold and precious jewelry, of course. And I'm living close to Venice, and 1 hour by car, 40 minutes more or less, okay? And I'm teaching University of Ferrara. This is also close to my city, is 1 hour by car. So Ferrara is here, the northeastern part of Italy as well, and is an old university founded in the 13th century. So I started using mini screws and skeletal cartridge many years ago. As you see, I published this paper in '95, in which I published a technique to insert implants and mini screws in the palate with safety, without going into the nose, so without creating fistulas or any other problem. Okay. Now, I moved, yes, I developed the spider screw in the years 20, and then as you see, the mini screws that started very simple. Today we have a lot of mini screws on the market, and also on these systems, you know, and the last one is the angulated mini screws, as you see here. So, what's I'm talking about? I'm talking about rationality. What is rationality? It's ability to choose among multiple alternatives. We see in these 3 days, we will see many alternatives to treat our patient and to select what we think is the best for us. So it's a property of processes with logic. Okay. So my presentation will focus on efficacy of the system to expand the maxillary bone in adult patients without surgery. So I'm talking about efficacy, I'm talking about drawbacks, because every technique has some unknown side effect, unwanted side effect, every technique. Then I'm talking about individualized bone concept, and success, failure, and complication. Of course, because there are some of this in this technique. The first paper published on the marker of the skeletal maxillary expansion was by KIông M and Giuliano who are here with us. So they opened the eyes of the orthodontists in the world, because they said, oh, look here, you can expand the maxilla even in that patient without surgery. Okay, but is this approach really better than the one that we know or we knew before? Then other people published, okay, and they are using a name that might be different names, put different names according to the one. And here you see they are using a certain kind of appliance, as you saw before, in which is a prefabricated appliance. You put in the palate, and you put 4 mini screws, and you open. But is MARPE better than SARPE? First question for us that we are clinicians. If you look at the literature, in this study, okay, by Oliveira, they compared SARPE with MARPE. They came to the conclusion that MARPE showed an increase of skeletal, they increase in skeletal maxillary expansion. So we have more maxillary palatal expansion than basal bone in respect to MARPE. To SARPE. And MARPE has also a more parallel expansion, both in coronal and axial view. Okay, there is less buccal inclination of the velo process in respect to SARPE. So it seems that it's really much more advantageous in respect to SARPE. Now, if we look now another paper that is an umbrella review. This report, they reported that MARPE seems to present significant clinical changes when compared with conventional RPA, and even if we compare with SARPE, with less adverse clinical outcomes. So we can conclude that MARPE is the first choice when we want to expand the maxilla in adult patients. So first choice should be that. But there are also some unwanted side effect. What is the unwanted side effect? The MARPE, first of all, is acronym. It's maxillary minuscule anchorage rapid pulse expansion. So it means we are expanding by using mini screws. Then we have different types of approach. One is appliance driven. We have our appliance, we connect the appliance with the teeth, and then we expand. Okay? So it's a teeth connected standard appliance there, finish. But there is another concept, it's a bone driven appliance. So we want to expand the maxilla, not relying on this type of appliance, but rely on the amount of bone we find in each individual patient. So it's an individualized approach. When we apply MARPE, we have mini screws applied in the palate, okay, and we connect with the teeth. Of course, when we activate, we are going to apply a lot of forces we saw before. Can be 4 kilos, 3 kilos, 10 kilos, and so on. What happens with the mini screws? The mini screws are not cost integrated. So what they do, they move outside. We have a lot of research that says that. So by moving the screws in the lateral direction, what happens to the teeth? They are connected with the MARPE. They cannot go stay where they are. They are going to incline, of course, and they're going out a little bit, of course. Okay. So sometimes we apply forces that sometimes they bend the mini screws as well in order to be successful. So what happens to the teeth? The teeth can have even some fenestration. In young people, we can recover very suddenly. Adult people, we know that periodontium is not capable sometimes to recover as we would like. And then suppose you have this patient with a narrow palate, with a thin periodontal support, okay? You see how much thing is in the buccal bone, in the molar area. And you see the level also, the level is very high because this patient lost the periodontal support before, okay? And there are many because when we have narrow palate, normally what we have the periodontal support, okay? So if we now apply an appliance like that, we start to expand, what happens? It happens that we are losing thickness in the bone, in the buccal bone, and then we are also losing the height of the buccal bone. So this is something that's been described in the literature, because Moore reported this, as you see here, in which he described that, in conclusion, the incorporation of teeth into bone expander resulted in increased severity of side effects. Okay, so we have high loss and formation of diseases. And there is also other studies, as you see here. This is systematic review. We have decrease in the mean buccal bone thickness and also loss of buccal alveolar height. That is something that I don't like having in my patient. So even, especially today that we are talking a lot about patient-centered orthodontics, I don't want to create problems to have advantage and have drawbacks or unwanted side effects. So therefore, the University of Ferrara, we created this is a digital planning research institute in which people are focused on all the digital technology applied to different fields in orthodontics and also to skeletal anchorage, okay? And we thought we want to expand the maxilla, yes, because this is a wonderful idea, really. But we want to do it without touching the teeth. We won't rely only on skeletal anchorage. We don't want to touch the teeth, okay? So, here, the clinician can send their X-rays as they are fine, as you will see, and if you want, you can send and ask to plan for you, okay, this type of approach. So you can take also a picture of the QR score. But so we are using the big cortical concept because we are relying only on skeletal anchorage. We are not relying on teeth. Okay. So the forces we want, the forces are going to be dissipated from the meniscus. And there are several studies who demonstrate that if we have a big cortical anchorage, we have better stability minuscule stability. Okay, so we want basically this logic to have better minuscule stability to be able to expand the maxilla. And when possible, we are looking for 3 cortical angles. These are sites where we have probably sometimes more bone than in the palatal bone. So why not to take advantage of sites where we have more bone? Okay, and we described this in 2022. And that's a patient. Okay, it's an open bite, it's a class 2, it's a cross bite. Okay, we want to expand the maxilla and then correct occlusion. And at that time, this is one of the first cases, 2014. Okay, we planned the minusculus in this way. As you see, it's a strange way to plan them. Okay, but we are searching places where we have bigger amount of bone. Okay, so no tooth is involved, and because we wanted to apply the minusculus and the appliance in the single time, okay, we did an appliance like that. We were successful. Okay, so you see, we published the one visit concept in which we are applying minusculus and appliance in the same time, but not driven from the appliance, but driven from our planning. And this is the compensity before and after the maxillary expansion. You can see that the inclination of the smolar is not changing at all, and also the thickness of the bone buccally to the first molar is always the same. That's something that we like, absolutely. So there is also another advantage when we do like that, because the teeth are free, are not involved. We can start to move the teeth during the stabilization of this maxillary suture opening. Okay, and that's our patient before and after. So for me, the rule number 1 is if you want to do, if you want to make an approach like this, select the proper places. Now, how can you apply the minusculus there, exactly there? We developed a system that is called MPA, Minuscule Assisted Palate Application, in which we are using digital technology. So we superimpose the cervical of the maxilla to the compensity, and then we plan virtually the minusculus in places where we find the biggest amount of bone. And then when we have that, we create a guide. And by a guide, we are inserting the minusculus in the proper place. Is the lateral self-use? Can we do it in the lateral? No, because according to this study, it's important that we can do a lot of errors. I don't have time to explain. But the question is this really a really precise system? Could everybody use it, or do we need experience? That's the question. So we did a study at the University of Ferrara, and we published this year. Okay. The purpose is to see if the beginners, students of the first year of the specialty orthodontists can do it by themselves or not, or if we need experience. So we take 40 models, 20 models, 40 schools, a group of 10 beginners and a group of 10 experts. We gave them the same model, we teach them the protocol because it's not a simple minuscule insertion, okay? And then what we did, we take all the models with the 2 minuscule insertion, then we put a scan abutment, and then we superimpose each model of each participant to the original one in which we plan the guide, okay? And then we superimposed it, we did some measurement in the 3 plane of space. And we did that, you see here, 9 measurements in the 3 planes of space. And the apex, and the head of minusculus, and the angulation. And what is the result? That, of course, we were expecting some errors, but the beginners made an average error of 0.28 millimeters. That from a clinical point of view, what is 0.28 is nothing, okay? Even the expert, they made some errors, okay? They did 0.12. So the difference between expert and inexperts is 0.16. But what is the most important message of this research? Okay, is that the system is reliable and we can perform also what we call one this technique. So it means we can apply the mini screws and the appliance simultaneously, at the same time, in the same appointment. That's most important, okay, for us. We want to not 2 steps, but 1 step. Okay, I want to present another patient now. This patient is, Martina, and she is an open bite. She has a narrow maxilla. We would like to close the bite and expand the maxilla. The maxilla sometimes seems to be very narrow, but if you look now, this what is with the convexity you see here is really narrow in respect to the mandible. You can use different technique to measure the differences, but we see immediately that maxilla is too narrow. Another thing we see immediately, that the root of this patient, the upper maxilla, are not inside the bone perfectly, okay? Many teeth are a little bit outside. So the periodontal support is still buccally. So we want to expand the maxilla, yes, but we don't want to expand and provoke periodontal problems. Now, could we have failure, or may we predict success? If we look at the literature, as we showed before, but it should be, okay, if we rely on this study, okay, they say that when we have a mid-sagittal suture with these characteristics, probably we have failure. We need survey, okay. But is it really reliable, the literature, this kind of literature? If we look now, by the time the literature, we have some changing. Because later on, 2021, this group of authors, they compared a group 25 patients in which we were capable to expand maxilla, and then what they found. Then they investigated the characteristic of mid-sagittal suture. 17 patients were successful. They had a mid-sagittal suture characteristic B and C that is predictable to be successful, but 11 of them, they were stage D and E. So they concluded that the characteristic of mid-sagittal suture is not reliable. Okay, but it's more important is the age of the patient, because when we increase the age, we have decrease of success. Another important thing is the amount of bone we have here. Okay, this is important, how much bone we have. So it means we need stability for the mini-screws, of course, if we need a lot of bone here. It depends from the amount of bone. And we also can understand, we have to also point out that they are using a Marpe appliance driven. Okay, Marpe doesn't describe every kind of approach. Okay, so result is no, the mid-pattern characteristic mid-sagittal suture doesn't help you. But I thought I have now all the information. And then if you look at the literature, in 23 there is another group, another research, and they said, again, no, the first one was not good, the second one was not. What is most important is this one, okay? Zygomatic maxillary and pterygomaxillary suture are the most important to look for, okay? If you want to have success, you have to look at that. Okay, we have everything. But now, if we go to 2025, we have another paper. And this group, they said, oh, the majority of resistance is not there, okay? It's here, the pterygopalatal suture. So they give us another classification of the suture, and they underline that it's important, the pyramidal process, how the pyramidal process is matching, okay, the pterygoid notch, okay? That is very important area to look for in order to predict success or failure. So if we mix together all the literature, we really don't know where to rely on, okay? That's why we need what? We need expertise when we do that, okay? Because it's not always simple, okay? That's why at the university we said that we need a team that follow the literature, that look at the cases carefully, and they suggest and help you, okay? And that's what we do today, because we want to have individualized, okay, approach. In this case, Martina, this is the suture. If you look at the characteristics, what you say is this is probably D, probably E, and probably it's a failure. But we do big cortical and cortical. As you see, yes, the tricortical is higher than the nasal floor. Is this wrong if we go closer to the center of resistance? Depends what you want to have. If we want to expand the basal bone, the basal support, for me it's not wrong. For me it's correct, okay? So it depends what you want. So it's always an individualized concept, okay? Orthodontics is always like that. Okay, so we describe the three cortical anchorage. I want to put the minuscule where we have much more bone, not where I have 2 millimeters of bone, okay? Because for me it's more reasonable that if we have 3 cortical plates involved, I have better stability. And I can rely better on my skeletal anchorage. Or why do I use skeletal anchorage, not the other way? Okay, that is a slice of a combine, okay? And you can control if the minuscule is going there or going outside, okay, when you are using a guide, not when you're putting the minuscules like that, okay? And here you see another thing. Okay, what we have? 2 jack expander. Any reason to do that? I will show you later, okay? This is my patient, and that is the expansion, maxillary expansion. This point we transform a little bit delicate cases, I don't say difficult, but in moderate cases. So for me, my hand, I can use now some aligners, okay? I can treat my patient with aligners. I extrude the lower incisor instead of the upper one because it's becoming my tendency. Another important thing is that I can leave the minusculus in the balance. I can use my aligners. In the meantime, I don't block the teeth, keep them removed, okay? During maturation of the mid-palatal suture space that enlarged, okay? That's the case. At the end, patient is happy, okay? And this is what we want to have. The patient successfully treated, okay, from all different points of view. Now, this is the combi because this gives me more information. More information to compare the amount of bone we have buccally, okay? I don't think I increase the bone buccally in these cases, okay? Now, time is running, yes. So you can compare maxilla and mandible, okay? We really expand maxilla the size that we wanted. So for me, message number 2 is use sides with larger amount of bone if you want to expand the maxilla, okay, successfully with an individualized approach. But of course, success and failure are very close. So you can really, the ways to have success and failure are very close. Sometimes for minimum error, you can go to the failure way, okay? And we don't want to go in that direction. We want to have success direction. And you see, it depends from many things. Maxillary sutures, minuscules we are using, activation protocol we are using, appliance time, precision of the appliance and rigidity, because there are studies that demonstrate that if the appliance is precise and rigid, it's much better, transfer much better the forces to the maxilla. Okay. So, regarding minusculus, I'm using this one because it has a conic part at the beginning to overcome the disparallelism, and also we have also vertical walls that they can withstand to the lateral forces that when we want to expand it. Okay, so I like these 2 concepts. And today we can also rely on angulated minusculus because we want to insert the appliance very easily. Regarding the activation is a study from Wieslander and Walter, okay? And they published that if we don't apply too much forces and we go slow, it's better than applying high forces and very go rapid. And this is a human being, it's not on animal study, okay? So today we should speak about not MARPE, but MASPE. Minuscule assisted slow palatal explanation. In fact, I'm using a slow protocol. I'm not activating 1 activation per day or 2 or 3. I do it 1 every 2 days, okay? Sometimes every 3 days, okay? And how much should we expand? We can expand a lot. There are some people are saying we cannot expand more than 4 millimeters. You can expand a lot, but the expansion, maxillary expansion, depends from the lower arch, remember. So it's the lower arch that give you the amount of expansion you need, okay? It's not the fact that you want to show big expansion. And also, in this case, you see, we have a complete crossbite at the beginning, the molar, and then we have a resolution of the crossbite. We didn't influence the inclination of the upper molar. Absolutely, as you see here, we didn't influence also the thickness, the bone thickness buccally. So, for me, this is very important. And here you see how much expansion we reach in this patient, because this patient needed, okay, 10 in the anterior and 8 in the posterior. Another important concept is that when I'm using mini screws to expand the palate, I don't want to remove the appliance and remove the mini screws. Why? To put other mini screws to go over with the treatment? No. If I need mini screws, I leave the one that I need. And during treatment, for example, in this case, I perform two extractions, the upper arch, and then I wanted to reinforce the anchorage. I can use it. Okay? Why not? So I like a retrieval system, absolutely, because I respect my patient. Okay. And now, what's about this tandem skeletal span? We did some research, but I want to notice, underline that the first reason was that we developed because we want to go closer to the center of resistance. Because when we have narrow palate, the expander doesn't stay close to the palatal vault, it stays down. And we have a lot of lever. And when we have a longer lever, we have a bigger possibility of failure because the muscles are moving too much and we are expanding the teeth, okay? So, I want to go to put my expander as close as possible to the palatal vault. So, there's no space, we put one in the anterior part, one in the posterior. Okay, so but there are other advantages. Easier to activate, we discover later. We don't need to apply big forces to activate. We don't need a special range, okay? We don't really, okay? Very, very easy to activate. Third advantage, we can make differential expansion. Are your cases all symmetric? No. Sometimes I need to expand a little bit more in the anterior part or in the posterior. So at the end of the expansion, I can also differentiate the amount of expansion. And these are the main advantages. So I want to show this patient. Patient is an open bite, he came, is a lot of gingival recession. So if we have a lot of gingival recession, it means that also bone is down. Okay? We have many periodontal problems. The lower canine is out, you see. So now it's an open bite, we want to be treated with a surgery. This is cephalometric, okay, and this is suture, mid-arterial suture characteristic. So, what way can we do? What can we predict here? It can be difficult, okay. So, we perform a mini screw insertion, and we plan the mini screws as usually. We thought we want to have 6 because of the anatomy, of the characteristic of the other sutures, okay, 2 expander, and we expanded, and seems we have overexpanded, but it's not because now we want to intrude the teeth. And we want to use the same mini screws that we used for expansion, okay, we leave some of them, and then we are creating a system that inside we are using a bar, okay, and outside we are using plates, sugamar plates, and we are using, for example, mini screws, straight mini screws, conic one in the anterior, and angulated in the posterior, and we use the same mini screws to treat the patient, and we didn't use any other mini screws to do that, to control the open bite, okay, so we treated the lower, in the upper a little bit, from the open bite we finish with a deep bite. Now we can intrude the incisors with a simple wire, okay? And we correct the gummy smile as well. So at the end, we have a total intrusion, okay? And this is superimposition. This is structural superimposition, okay? That, you superimpose according to Bjorn. And this cephalometric structural superimposition exsectorial superimposition as well. Now, okay, if we look now at the complicity, we see a really big, a major movement that we obtain in cases like this. Okay, and that is the combine 3 years after. You see that the bone maturation, there is bone inside the mid-sartorial suture, and the size of our maxillary expansion is almost parallel. And that's a patient smiling at the beginning, at the end, and compare, very happy. So, is tricortical ankles advantages? So we thought we do a study. And we perform a study with a finite element analysis, okay? And we compare tricortical, bicortical, we compare MARPE with a single check screw and MARPE, or you want to call tandem, with the two expander, okay? And we did this, and what we found, the amount of expansion is greater with tricortical anchorage in respect to bicortical. And second result is the two screw expander, the tandem, is generating parallel opening, both in the transverse and coronal place, promoting balding expansion of the maxilla, and seems to be more advantageous in respect to the single one. But we did also a study on human being, and we are now publishing it, okay? And you see, because it was a work of a student at the university, okay? And we did in 24 patients, adult patients, as you see here. And what is the result? It's effective in obtaining maxillary expansion, okay? No tooth is involved, okay? Parallel maxillary expansion, okay? And little or no effect on dental tipping. And no effect on the vertebral bone bending and buccal bone thickness. And this is demonstrated in these cases. And the spatial outcomes appear to be independent from the vertical skeletal pattern, things that has been reported in another study, but also is independent from patient age. It's a small group, but this is our result. So rule number 3 for me, select the proper appliance, because really we found that there are some advantages with this appliance. But failure is not predictable. Okay, you cannot predict we have a failure. I have success. Cannot be excluded with certainty. So what we have to do as clinicians, we always have to have a plan B and a plan C sometimes. So we have to explain to our patient, okay? And what I'm doing, for example, this is a 48 years patient, okay? Periodontist sending it to me because she has a lot of periodontal problems. Okay, you see here, it's a lot of crowding. Okay, if you look at the panoramic, she lost two teeth. Lower, the amount of periodontal bone is very, very poor. Okay, so would you like now to expand the maxilla? I like to expand because there is crowding. Do you want to expand to align the teeth, as the periodontist asked me? No, I don't want to expand the teeth, absolutely, in a case like this. You want to connect the teeth with the maxillary expander. For me, it's risky. So we thought we do it just using skeletal anchorage. Okay, again, look at the combine. Look at the combine, and now she needs maxillary expansion. So if I'm capable to perform maxillary expansion, for me is valuable for the patient. Not only from the aesthetic point of view, but also from the health of the patient. So now we have to consider this is the characteristic of mid-sartorial suture. What do you do? So we have to take in consideration the age of the patient. Remember, if you increase the age, you increase the difficulties. Suture staging, okay, periodontal problems. So we have to select the proper mini screws, the number, type of appliance, and eventually explain to the patient that eventually we can use some adjunct therapy. There is only one paper that provides you some information about, for example, cortical puncture. This is an adult patient. If I do some anti-cortical puncture, do I perform any mistake? No, we don't need to grow. Okay, the growth is finished. Okay, when the surgeon does the surgery, doesn't take care. Okay, it's open the suture, cut the suture. So why not to perform some acupuncture? There are no other studies that demonstrate this effective, but we had, okay? So we do bone board the tandem skeletal spine, acupuncture. So this is the planning. We are using angulated meniscus in the back and conic straight in the anterior part in order to have a perfect fitting of the appliance. And then we have a guide to perform acupuncture without perforating the palatal nose, okay? And then we combine both of them, as you see. That is expansion, we are successful. Okay, then we treat the cases again with the line and the lumbar. In the lower, we select the extraction of the lower incisor, okay? And this is the case at the end, class 1, perfect thing at the end, and we align, we didn't create any periodontal problem. And the patient is 60 and is smiling again, okay? That's what we provided, individualized with an individualized approach. If we have a failure, if we are capable to analyze the reason, remember, it's not the failure. Can be a step to the success. Okay, you can understand where you make a mistake and where you can improve yourself. So in some cases, we do acupuncture, and we do another thing, we do corticotomy in difficult cases, and we announce the patient, if we are not successful this way, eventually we do this. Okay. And this is another step to provide success in our patient. I'm going to take conclusions how, you see, transversal dimension we can correct without suffering. I call bloodless suffering. This is our approach, okay? We can move, if you want, from the appliance driven to the bone driven. Okay, I'm using the posterior part of superior insertion side for a parallel and larger maxillary expansion. The tandem skeletal expander seems to be effective without drawbacks, and cortic puncture can be evident in some patients. But of course, we must. The first rule is not nocere. Be trained properly, study, and listen correctly. So I give you 3 messages to finish my lecture. We need to respect our patients, so think about that, okay? Because we are responsible for our treatment, okay? And so we have to propose to our treatment reasonable type of treatment. So it's rational type of treatment, because our patients should be treated very, very precious thing. So we have to be concentrated in each patient and needs proper treatment. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your very informative and inspiring concepts and sharing all the concepts with us. On behalf of the organizing committee, let us present a certificate of appreciation to Giuliano and Maino. If you happen to have questions, we can have a personal conversation during the coffee break, because we have a lot of time together.